I want people to, we need more bison out there. We'll never get to 30, 60 million. We know that. But there's nothing wrong with people raising bison. And so, like beef people, there's people that raise cattle that have come to our ranch that want to switch to bison. How creative, how awesome of a story is that? There's nothing wrong with beef. I want people to know that. But if you're into the regenerative thing like we are, and you're wanting to do those things and make the land better, your water better, your soil better, look at bison and see what they did it for hundreds of years on the Great Plains. Yeah. There's a reason why the Great Plains are the way they are.
Yeah. Dive into that for me then. Their preservation side of things. Like, that's obviously a huge, part of why you do this. What's the kind of nuts and bolts behind it?
Well, so I look at genetics.
Okay.
And I learned a lot of this from Gerald Parsons, my vet, my mentor I was talking about. So he is kind of the genetic guy. He's one of them. There's a lot of bison people out there. But he said the first thing that you need to do is if you're starting to raise bison, he said you need to start with good ones first. Don't just go out and just buy some random bison, because some producers or ranchers may not have good ones. And here's what happened in the bottleneck in the late 1800s. When those populations decreased rapidly and they got smaller, the bison were brought into cattle ranches. And it was great because they were catching them out on the frontier, which was awesome. They were bringing them into ranches. Well, a lot of people started the beefalo thing. And so you have a little wash up there of genetic diversity. And then, if you take an animal from millions down to less than 1,000, there's going to be some interesting things that happen with any animal. And it's happened with many animals in our country. And so I kind of keep that in mind. But I think that whatever animal that we have today left of the genetics of when the Native Americans were living off of them, and everything that we had before we were here, whatever we have of them, we try to keep that and hold on to it. Now, I don't know what the correct term for that is. If you call that restore, conserve, I don't know the correct term for that, but that's what we try to keep, is what we have. And so when you do that, you can test. There's ways that you can test to see what your animals have, and the number one thing is let's keep cattle genes out. So if you've got bison out there that have it in them, and people still breed them to cattle and still make beefalo, which I highly discourage, we need to hold on to that, because we almost lost that animal. I'm almost gone. All the genetic diversity of where those bison that we have today, survived the last ice age. And so you've got to hold on to that. And so that's kind of where that passion of genetic diversity comes from, and paying attention to the genes. And we're so fortunate. Do you know that the Wichita Mountains is one of the most prestigious?
People don't know that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very underrated place.
Yeah, it is and not only is its own unique world down there in, Lawton or Medicine Park area, but those bison there are some of the most genetically diverse bison from the last rescue of them. And they all started from the Bronx Zoo. Well, where did those animals come from? Because they were caught out on the range when they started to disappear. And then the Bronx Zoo started their own conservation program. Well, I want to say, and it's down there at the museum there at the Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge. I think in 1900s, 1915, 20, somewhere in there, they loaded them up on a rail car, hauled them by rail down there, I think 15 or 20 animals, something like that, dropped them off at Cache, and then drove them, like cattle drive, to the Wichita Mountains Refuge, and said, there you go. And when you drive down there, you pass that, you drive over the cattle garden, it's like, it's pretty awesome, Yeah. But no, those animals there are, there's people that talk about 3 or 4 places in America that have the best genetics of what's left of American bison, genus species, Yellowstone, and you talk about the Wichita Mountains, and there's a couple more in there, like Wind Cave or something, but there's 2 or 3 places. And when you talk about it compared to Yellowstone, you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, those animals, now they're not going to be as huge and magnificent because of location. There's a difference in Yellowstone and a difference in Lawton, Oklahoma, right? But the diversity side of it is there. I mean, one of the biggest bison in the world, which is black dog, what you can find on the Oklahoma Historical Society. I have a picture blown up. I'm putting in my classroom. It's one of the biggest bison ever recorded. Guess where he was? Wichita Mountains Wildlife Refuge.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it says 2,800 pounds. That's a massive animal. Yeah, and so you don't think about that. They're just down the road.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, underrated.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. And so that's where the YouTube side of underrated. I think about that all the time.